It is not that people disappear in my family. They're just not there. It is as if they never existed in the first place.
That's from the docu-series The Knowing, based on the book of the same name by Tanya Talaga, the award-winning author of 7 Fallen Feathers. And she joins us now with more on what became a deeply personal story for her about residential schools, because you started working on this just many, many years ago as research on residential schools. Tell me how it evolved, because I don't want to give anything away.
Well, I inherited, after my Uncle Hank died, this brown filing folder that he had with him for decades. And inside this folder were all of these notes, letters that he'd written to the Ontario government, to the federal government, trying to find any information he could about his mom, Liz, and her mom, Annie. And it was always something that was a mystery. Who were the women in our family? Who were the maternal matriarchs on my mom's side of the family? My father was Polish. My mom is Anishinaabe, and she is from Fort William First Nation. I'm a member of Fort William, and so was my Uncle Hank, who left me the folder. But we didn't know anything about the women. Where were they all from?
Right.
And so I inherited this folder. I started to research through his notes, but I would put it away because it was so depressing. It was so hard. He hit so many roadblocks. So many letters got returned to him from the government saying there are no records. We can't find the existence of Liz. We don't know who Annie is. I mean, it was just so hard to read. And when Kamloops happened, right before Kamloops happened, I actually had started to look for more information on Liz, and more importantly, Annie, because my mom, who's 80 years old, she asked me, she goes, will you please find Annie? I know she's buried somewhere here in Toronto, but I don't know where she is.
Right. And Kamloops is the 215 unmarked graves that were discovered there. And that was kind of the start of everything.
That was the start of everything, you know, and I always say those spirits of the Lestway Way, that's a phrase that the community uses instead of saying the 215, the missing really woke Canada up, right? I mean, it was something that we already knew. We knew that if you're a First Nations person, there are people in your family, in your community that never made it home from Indian residential school. Right. They never made it home from Indian hospitals or tuberculosis sanitaria or asylums. And when I was looking for Annie, Kamloops happened, and it just became apparent to me this is all part of the same story. Annie wasn't a child when she went missing, when she disappeared in 1930. She was a woman just a little bit older than me, but she was gone, and she never returned home again, and she was in an unmarked grave somewhere. And so the search for Annie and the story of what's happened in this country since the discovery of Lestway Way at Kamloops, it's all intertwined. Your story is the story of so many, and this is a photo of the signing of Treaty 9, which is kind of encompassing all of Ontario almost. And you believe that Annie is part of in that photo somewhere? Yeah, that's true, because Annie was there in 1905 when Duncan Campbell Scott, who was the architect of the Indian residential school system, negotiated Treaty Number 9, and he took photographs, and Annie she was there, and that's all the women that were there at the time for a feast at the signing. And I look at this photo and I wonder if she's in that picture, because we don't have a photo of her. We don't know much about her other than what we could find in the records. Right. And
just the erasure that you talk about, especially of women.
Of women. The Knowing, this is the book that came out of my search for Annie and what happened at Kamloops, is really a story of women. It's a story of our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmas, our great-great-grandmas, that tie, and how, especially if you're a First Nations woman, the government erased you through colonial laws, through Indian residential schools, with taking your children away. Annie's children were taken away into the Indian residential school system, and we don't know where the majority of them are.
Right.
My great-grandma was number 6, but the other 5, one died of whooping cough, the other 4 just gone into the system.
I could talk with you for hours about this book. It is so powerful. People need to read this. And actually, Tanya is going to be talking about The Knowing at Hamilton's Playhouse Cinema tonight at 7 o'clock. We'll have a link to the ticket information. It is almost sold out, but this is a talk you have to go to. We'll have the information up on our website, chch.com/morninglive. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.